Hello and welcome to the recording of our webinar, How to Have an Easier Life with Clare Downham and me, Paola Royal. In this webinar, we're going to talk about our experience, how we came to the three principle paradigm understanding, our insights into it, and we hope that you are going to take something away for you. It would be really lovely if you could share your takeaway afterwards with us via email or however you would like to get in touch with us. I invite you to listen with an open mind. Please leave everything you think you know aside. And maybe through that you're going to hear something new to you. Happy listening.
When in 2014, when I went to a Hay House conference in London, and I heard Michael Neill speak for the first time, and came away with all Joe Dispenza's work. So this is not Joe Dispenza's work, just to let you know. And then quite a while before I finally took my deep dive into the three principles, I listened to the Inside Out Revolution again by Michael Neill, and again just went, don't understand this, don't get it. And I think it goes back to what Paola was saying there, is that I was looking for it to fit in with everything else I thought I already knew about psychology and how the mind works. And because it didn't, it kind of rubbed me up the wrong way, I think, more than anything. And I couldn't take it on board, and I wasn't open-minded to it. So I love that invitation that Paola made, and I really, reiterate that, to look at this with an open mind. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and how the three principles, when I finally did pay attention to it, the impact that's had on my life, and kind of how I came across it. So I was a primary school head teacher once upon a time. So I think I'd mostly be on strike now, wouldn't I? Because bless them, they're finally biting back, poor teachers. Until March 2015, when I went into work one day, took one look at my computer, and I couldn't carry on. I couldn't even switch it on, actually. Even bending down to press that button that day was completely impossible for me. I walked out of work that day, and I never went back. I didn't know I wasn't going to go back. I thought I was going to have a few days off sick and then go back when I felt better, when I'd had a bit of sleep, and started to feel better, that I'd just go back. But I was actually off work for a whole year. I did, in fact, have adrenal burnout. So I have done stress. I may be the queen of calm now, but I've done stress to the point where I quite literally broke my system, really broke my adrenal glands and made myself very, very sick. Not a recommended way to do life at all. When I finally resigned on the 1st of April 2016, it's a bit of an April fool and a half, that, isn't it? I was invited to train to be a hypnotherapist through a random email that just happened to drop into my inbox. And so almost, well, not almost by accident, completely by accident, I started a business being a hypnotherapist. And I also got really into self-development. So my story around trying to change or fix myself, which I think probably everybody in this room has been through in some way, shape or form, was that I wasn't doing enough in my business. I wasn't productive enough. I wasn't motivated enough. I was procrastinating too much. So there's a lot about trying to change behavior more than feelings and thoughts, really. But I knew by that point that there was some thought thing going on behind it. But I really thought that it was my job to try and change that and to change my behavior. So I got into a lot of self-development. So that was, well, pretty much every tool, trick and technique in the book, and those that are not in books as well. I tried. Read a lot of the productivity books, lots of books about habits, and lots of books about how to get things done. The 5-second rule by Mel Robbins. I'm sure some of you have come across that. Atomic habits, mini habits, tiny habits. I don't know, all the different sizes of habits. I tried all of those. I did lots of miracle mornings and lots of different affirmations, meditation, I tried poking around in the past. I tried that with counselling and also on hypnosis. I tried everything. And I kind of was okay, but it felt like I was on this self-development hamster wheel, and that I couldn't get off it, because the feeling I had was that if I stopped, I would just stop, that I'd stop being able to do things, and I wouldn't be productive, and I wouldn't be moving in the right direction and moving towards my goals and all those other things that we're told we're supposed to do when we're in business. And then in January 2020, I was introduced to the 3 principles, again by accident. A friend of mine had trained with Michael Neill, so it's been Michael Neill all the way for me in terms of who I've learned from the most. A friend of mine had trained with Michael Neill. He just put a post on Facebook saying, "Oh, I need some people to practice my coaching on. Who can I practice on?" And I went, "Oh, this could be the thing that finally fixes me. This could be what I need." And so off I went to have some 3 principles coaching in person, because of course in January 2020 we could do that, couldn't we? We could go to somebody else's office and actually have a conversation. And that's how it started. I had some coaching with him and something clicked. I'm not really 100% sure what, but I kind of realized that he was pointing to something that was fundamentally true. And because of that, I started my own really deep dive into the 3 principles. I read just about everything I could get my hands on, and I listened to lots of audiobooks and podcasts, and I attended little mini trainings, things like this, and mini trainings from people like Michael Neill and other teachers. I listened to Sydney Banks stuff, and because he's the originator of the 3 principles. And what I see happened was a complete change in how I was looking at my problems. Almost that I stopped looking at my problems, really. So if you can imagine, when we're very focused on what's wrong with us, it's almost like we're turning towards what's wrong with us and we're looking at it all the time. What's the next thing I need to do to fix this? Oh, I'm still like that. Oh, what else do I need to do to try and fix this? And all the time we're thinking about the thing that we think is wrong with us, thinking about it all the time. And because we're thinking about it all the time, it becomes much more in our awareness, and then we notice that thing that's wrong with us more of the time. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, really. And what happens when we're doing a lot of self-development is we're just focusing on us all the time. Now, what I felt happened with the 3 principles conversation was literally a 180-degree turn to stop thinking about me, stop thinking about how I'm doing, what I need to do next to fix myself, what affirmation shall I change this week, or shall I do 7 more gratitudes, or whatever else I thought I needed to do. And I began to participate in a really interesting conversation about how human beings work. And it was really interesting. And it was full of lovely people like Paola. And I met lots of wonderful people. And then, of course, March 2020 came along, and the whole community moved online. So again, I had access to a real deep dive into this understanding. So I'll share a little bit before I hand over to Paola. I'll share a little bit about the impact that I've seen in myself. So I've only been around the principles for 3 and a bit years. But there has been a deep dive, partly because of the lockdown, because I had a lot of opportunity to listen to the teachings. But that impact happened pretty quickly, really, when I finally decided I was going to accept it as something useful. So that thing that I went to try and sort out, which was my productivity, motivation, not procrastinating, has almost virtually disappeared as an issue in my life. Like, I would say sometimes I do things that are not what I would like to be focusing on, but I generally get most things done in a very guided, kind of intuitive way. I don't get as distracted as I used to get. And I am probably the most productive, and productive from a really creative place as well, which is great because it feels like it's coming from inspiration rather than motivation. It's not blood, sweat and tears. It's love, passion and energy. It feels very different like that in terms of what I actually do on a daily basis. So that's an amazing impact on my business and how I am in my business. It's been huge for me. The other massive thing for me has been people, because they used to really get on my nerves. Not like, I loved people, but a lot of people don't live their life Claire's way. And I used to find that really problematic for me. That used to have me ranting, moaning, beeping my horn. My children learnt to swear in the back of the car, let me tell you, because, middle lane hoggers. I mean, what anyway? I had a lot of bugbears, a lot of people's things that they did that I just thought were stupid and quite frankly, and used to get really wound up about. And I have to say that, I still have my moments with middle lane hoggers. But I do, and other people, but I don't have the same level of ranting. I kind of notice that I'm going off into a rant, and I have a tendency to kind of realize that I'm doing it much quicker and come back down out of the rant and feel better again. I think it's that realization that the ranting is creating the discomfort, not the other person. That's really, really, really important. So there's the relationship, my business, my productivity, motivation. There's my relationships. There's just my general relationship with my physical body. So I am physiologically a 52-year-old woman. There's no getting away from it, who has experienced adrenal burnout, has underactive thyroid, and of course is cruising through the back end of the menopause. So physiologically, I can go very dramatically up and down, energetically, brain fog-wise. Oh, we've got a bit of an echo. Can you just mute Susan, Paola, because we've got a bit of an echo in there. Can energetically go very up and down. And my relationship, I still have my ups and downs with it, and have my days where I really would rather not be a menopausal woman, frankly, but it's an awful lot better than it used to be. There's a lot more ease around it. My relationship with people in general is better, but my relationship with my fiance is so much better. We were probably in quite a tricky place before we came across the principles. I was very fortunate that he's learnt them too. So that's been really cool. And our relationship's tons better, and it's just very light-hearted most of the time. Now, my loving relationships are better, but my difficult relationships are better too. So I've got a couple of people in my life. We've all got somebody, haven't we, who is not easy to get on with, perhaps, or behaves in a way that is not easy. And even those people seem to be less of a problem. They never really were a problem. It's my thinking about them, but there definitely is a big change there in terms of my relationship with other people. And happiness, contentment, joy, presence just seem to be more and more of my everyday experience, which they weren't before. I find joy in the simplest things. You should see me if I see a dandelion that's pushing its way through some tarmac. I mean, I just get beside myself about the littlest things. I find that I notice my own environment a lot more. And because of this presence and this being in a present moment experience more of the time, I do find that I am calmer, more relaxed, more easygoing. And life doesn't have to be that complicated. My life used to be busy doing things to try and make myself feel okay. And there's a lot less doing going on now. Life is simpler and still utterly joyful. So that's a little bit about my journey with the three principles over the last 3 and a bit years. And so I'm going to pass over to Paola now. She's going to tell you a little bit about her journey.
Beautiful, really nice. I'm now came across the principles in 2015. I used to work for years as a physiotherapist and went more and more holistic. In 2006, I didn't decide, I just noticed more and more that to get the best out for my clients, I need to see the whole person. So I trained in energy psychology and I was running my own practice, which you can hear. I'm not English, I'm German, but I lived in Switzerland longer than in Germany and was running there a very good, vibrant practice. I had loads of clients. And then I came to the UK in 2010 with my second husband, who is English. I don't know, I got something with Englishmen. Always end up with an Englishman, and he's a very lovely soul. And so we came to the UK, and I found that I still had clients over in Switzerland, but my clients over here was a bit tricky to get to that. People in the UK have a slightly different attitude to their health. And so I was holding quite a bit of frustration that every time when I returned to the UK, I had cancellations, and over there I was in the flow and my practice was working really well. And I was already quite a spiritual person, and I was interested in Buddhism. I read also, like Clare, different books. I went and read as well The Secret and affirmations and all kinds, but it somehow never worked for me. I trained as a teacher for EFT, emotional freedom technique, and when I was just finishing my studies, my then mentor, she trained in something called the 3 principles, and I thought, what the heck is the 3 principles? And so I had a look on YouTube and I found a video from Rudy Kennard and with his then wife, Jenny Kennard. And I just listened to 1 or 2 of their videos and I immediately heard truth. It just hit home with me. Because what I really heard was that thought is creating our experience 100% of the time. And we're talking about thought all the time, but somehow we hear it, but we don't hear it. And when I really heard that, I had a huge insight. And I realized that when my experience is thought created, then my suffering comes from when I'm taking the neutral power of thought and personalizing. And that is where all our suffering starts. So I started to go on different courses, and I tell you, one of my first insights I had into this understanding is a very, very simplistic thing. What I want to tell you, I was on a course and it was beautiful sunshine. And in the break, I went out to have my lunch in the park. It was in Exeter. And I went outside and there was one lady sitting in the car eating her lunch. And I looked at that woman sitting in the car eating her lunch. And then I was thinking that she could think that I think, what is she sitting in her car eating her lunch? And then my next thought was, that's a lot of thinking I'm doing here. I can leave it just with that. And that was my first insight, because that's what we're doing constantly. We think a lot what other people could think about us, what they are thinking in their life. We think how we can change ourselves, how we can change other people. And we're doing a lot of judgment towards ourselves and towards other people. Since I know I'm living in my thought-created reality day in, day out, 100% of the time, my life is so much more quiet. It changed the way I'm listening to other people, because I'm not listening anymore to my own chatter in my own head. I can really, truly listen to the other person. Communication changed because my relationship to other people changed. Because it is, in the old days, I used to like to discuss and argue with people till it was nearly blood coming. Yes. And I tried to, somehow I couldn't see why other people have a different kind of view and why they're not seeing what I see. Today, I know that they live in their innocent illusion of thought. They're living how they see life fit out of their filter of thought. And I'm seeing it through my filter of thought. I can try to change somebody else's mind, but I cannot make them, because everybody got their own opinion. But the thing is, what we truly connect with is the essence which keeps us all, which were we all the same. Everything else is constructs. The way you see life, the way I see life. And through that, my relationship, like Claire was saying, changed also in the most beautiful way. So for example, I have a son who is turning 23 this year. And I split up from his dad when Finn was 3. And we have a really loving and kind relationship. But it was like the two of us, we were always like a little Italian family. So he was in one end of the house shouting. I was in the other end of the house shouting. And when we moved then to the UK, he was living with his dad. So we decided it's time for him, you know, he wants to spend some time with his dad because he moved back to the UK. And so I picked him up on Friday after school, and then we had the weekend together. But when we went in the car, sitting in the car, he had already some frustration about school stuff, what was going on. And then he lashed at me. And I thought, how dare is he talking to me in that way? And so I lashed back, and very quick, we started to have a big discussion, and we arrived at home. He jammed the door, went into his room, and I went upstairs. And that was, first of all, it. Till an hour or two later, and we came back together. We always were very good in communicating, because that was always for me very important. But I did not see clearly that it has nothing to do with me. When he was lashing at me, it has nothing to do with me. It was his frustration in his life. And when I could see that, through this understanding, deeply, insightfully see that, he was sitting back one Friday in the car. We were driving again here to my place. And he was again going off in one. And I could just sit there and see the love for him. And I could just see what was going on for him. And I didn't have to be reactive anymore. So I was very quiet, let him go and let him do his thing. And slowly but surely, he calmed down. He got really quiet, because he did see he didn't get the response from me anymore. And since then, our relationship is even more beautiful than it was before. We have a completely different, I can only say it that way, more beautiful relationship now. For my husband and I, my husband also knows about this understanding. And like Claire said, for him to have that knowledge is really beautiful, and we have a lot of fun. And when one goes off in one, which happens because we are human, then the other one doesn't take it as seriously anymore. So I tell you a really tiny story because I think that's a very, very typical story talking about relationships, and it doesn't have to be a partnership. It can be in any form. The toothpaste story, right? We all know it. When you are longer together, there comes earlier or later a toothpaste story, or not cleaning under the toaster, or whatever it is. So Alan, when the toothpaste gets nearly empty, he likes to put the toothpaste, you see, the wrong way round in my world. So he likes to put the ending to the top. Yeah, so up, so the ending to the top. And I like to put the ending to the bottom, right? So that went on for a few times, it always changed depending on who had brushed their teeth last, it ended up to the bottom or it ended up to the top. And a lot of relationships, sooner or later, and I saw that just in my son's relationship to his partner, little stuff like that starts to get in a little argument, and that can lead to big arguments. So one day I could see, and I did know that he cannot think like me and I cannot think like him. But I wondered what was his logic behind it. So he was already in bed. So I went with a toothpaste in my hand. I went into the bedroom and I laughed and I said, I just wonder, what is your logic behind that? And he said, well, funny you ask. I wondered about that too. And he said, well, we're having all the toothbrushes in there. And when I put it like I do in it, it all fits in really neatly. It's very logical, right? And I like to put it the other way, because then the toothpaste can go to the end and I can just press it and it comes out. So since then, we sometimes turn it around for the other person. And you see, but that's little stuff like that, which is leading into big arguments in a lot of relationships. But when we can see, I cannot think like you, you cannot think like me, we're connecting in a completely different way. We're connecting through the essence, which is love. But it is not your love or my love. It is unconditional love. It's the unconditional love, which has nothing to do with when I love you, you need to love me back, or you get certain things out of it. It is really, we are love. Love comes from within you, and it comes out when my mind gets quiet. So we're holding a lot of beliefs around ourselves. Some, they're useful, so you can call them constructs or beliefs. Some, they're useful for us, and some, they're holding us back to live the life we really would like to live. And I recently, because this understanding is very, very simplistic. It's super simplistic, but it is very complex. And it is actually, I'm just in the moment sitting in a course with Keith Blevins, who is a psychologist who is working with this understanding over 40 years already. And we're looking into the future science, because we never had a fundamental understanding in psychology. William James, one of the founder of psychology, he was always looking for fundamental laws, principles in psychology. But like Jung and Freud and other psychologists, they had ideas. They had ideas about psychology, but we never had a fundamental understanding like you have in physics. In physics, we have gravity. There is a mathematical equation behind gravity. And if we wouldn't have had that mathematical equation behind gravity, we couldn't build aeroplanes, for example. But we always had ideas in psychology, but never a fundamental understanding. And the last 40 so years, now 50 years, it is actually now, we have a fundamental understanding. There are 3 fundamental principles. And that is mind, thought, and consciousness. And we're not talking about brain. We're talking about the natural force of mind, like the intelligence behind life, thought, and consciousness. But we don't want to dip into that too deep today, because we're running a course and we invite you to join us in that course. And we put the link into the chat as well later on. So just to come to the end of what I want to talk about, there is only this moment right now. But thought is always taking us away. Now, what we do in other techniques is we try to change our thinking. We try to do something with it. But what we're talking here is, or what we're pointing to, is to your true nature. We're pointing out who you truly are. And that's what Clare found, and that's what I found, and that's what loads of people in this understanding found. And when you finding your true nature, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to change. I can sit in an uncomfortable feeling worried, anxious, low in mood. I don't like calling depressed. It's a low mood. I can sit in that, and I can sit in happiness and joy and whatever it is. It is always passing by. There is nothing to do when I can see that insightfully. It's purely that simplistic knowledge which helps us to guide us through life. And when we can see that, we have far less judgment towards ourselves. And it all starts with us. But we start to be more kind, more loving, more understanding with ourselves. And through that also with others. My mind is so much more quiet, like Clare said as well. I was last week, I spent a week with my parents in Germany, and my mom got dementia. She probably had a stroke. And it was like a working week. It was not a holiday. It was a working week. We had a beautiful time, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Since I'm back, a lot of people say, God, but it must have been really hard. It must have been really difficult. But thanks to this understanding, I was able to be present, to be in the moment. And we stayed in an Airbnb, and every time when I walked to my parents or went away again, I didn't contemplate about my mom and the situation. I was seeing the beauty around me. It's like, oh, like we had a conversation, and I was just saying like, oh, look at that tree, look at that plant, look at that bird, or whatever it is. So you get far less caught up. It's like taking the blinkers off in life and being able to see. But that doesn't stop us, that sometimes we have the blinkers on. But when we have them on, like I said before, there is far less judgment, but more kindness to myself and to my fellow human beings. So I connect today in a completely different way with people around me. There is only this moment right now. And when we can see this neutral power of thought guiding us, holding us, then there is far less suffering. Claire, do you want to add
But
anything?
just that last thing you said, there's far less suffering. That's it really. Once you realize how the suffering is being created, it's not about controlling our thoughts, but there does seem to be a choice point. Like, this, I don't think that people have maybe seen me I've done this live on LinkedIn before, but if I'm hitting myself on the head with a ruler and I'm telling you all about my terrible headache and I just can't get rid of it despite having sniffed lavender oil and drunk loads of water and been for walks and slept loads and stayed away from my screen and etc. Well, you're just going to say, stop hitting yourself on the head with a ruler when we start to realize that thought is creating our suffering. Sometimes it just feels easier to catch the train of thought before it goes into doom and gloom and us feeling terrible. And so I think this is for me the most beautiful route to less suffering. And I think that's what we all want as human beings, really, isn't it, Paola? We just want to feel good. It's a pretty strong driving force in humans, is that?
A lot of people who come to this understanding, they are used to sit down for hours in meditation. And they come to this understanding and they don't need to do that anymore. I mean, it is still a nice thing to do. And I still sit sometimes in silence. Actually, the other day I was sitting in the garden and I was sitting there and I thought, is this meditation what I'm doing here? Should I sit a certain way? Should I not have my cup of water in the hand? And I thought, I am already in a meditative state. As soon as you are present, you are in a meditative state. Your mind is getting quiet. So I'm not one to say, don't meditate, not at all. It's a very, very good thing to do, and it's very helpful. But a lot of people who go out of meditation, for example, then they go back into their life and they get completely caught up. So then they need to go again and need to meditate for hours or do whatever to find themselves. What we're talking here is giving you the understanding about yourself. It's not a technique.
I would say that on a moment by moment basis, I probably feel more calm now than I ever did during meditation when I was doing hours and hours of it many years ago. And like you say, I sometimes meditate now just for the pure relaxation and joy of it, like I do other things because I enjoy them, but not with that. I suppose it used to feel like I had to do it to be okay, and therefore it was quite addictive. In the same way that a glass of wine can seem addictive and relaxing, and is something we end up doing a lot. Meditation can be the same if we think that's the thing we need to do to feel okay.
It is like I used to have that with running as well, and with walking. I need to go for a walk to feel better, or I need to go for a run to feel better. But today it is, I go for a run because I like it. I want to go for a run, but it is not to make me feel better. I'm not going for a walk to make me feel better. I like it. I love being out in nature. I love being surrounded. Oh, it's just beautiful. But it is not to make me feel better, because I can also go for a walk and I'm completely caught up in thought and I didn't get anything from my surrounding.
So true.
It is how I experience life. It's that simplistic formula, and that to see that insightful will guide you, will support you to guide you through life with more ease. Shall we open it up for questions?
Absolutely. That'd be lovely. Anybody got any questions?
Thank you so much for coming along to the webinar or listening now to the recording. If you have any questions and would like to get in touch either with Claire or myself, then please contact us over clare@claredownham.com or visit her website at claredownham.com. Or me, Paola Royal. My email is paola@paolaroyal.co.uk, or visit my website www.healthylivingwithpaolaroyal.co.uk. We also would love to have you with us for our 6 weeks webinar, which I will share with you below. Thank you for listening. Have a lovely, lovely day.